Announce we're live. It's New Year's Eve.
Let's talk about it when we're a little closer, but it should be fun all the same. Hey,
Okay.
the season's not over yet. We're not into a doggone thing of off season yet, right? Right, Jeff? Like we're not doing any prep for anything in the off season. Definitely not.
I meant our personal, what we were just talking about.
Oh, sure. You want to talk about it?
I think we should. So happy New Year's Eve, everybody.
Happy New Year's Eve,
Um,
everybody.
Thanks for joining us. Robert's going to party tonight, so we're getting him in before the partying.
It's the dawn of a new era of Bears. 2022, Jeff, it's gone.
Get it out.
It's done tonight. 2023 starts in 2 weeks, but technically we turn the page on the calendar tomorrow. Like
Right.
it should be so much fun. I mean, the Bears are all but locked into a top 3 draft selection, despite multiple close losses, despite the development of their quarterback. And I mean, don't get me wrong, Jeff. I do think it's easy when people start. Jeff, there's nothing I've seen easier to confuse than hope for over optimism. We are not suggesting that in 2023 we're going to see a Bears team any better than best case scenario 10-7. Like, and that is, Jeff, like they nail everything, right? That's Seahawks draft class top to bottom and a really great free agent class. Because right now, look, we can talk about that later. The point is, Jeff, they are on the right road. This Bears team feels on a better trek than like basically most Bears teams that I think I've seen in my entire life. Like, I don't know about you, Jeff. It feels like the organization understands what they need to prioritize. It seems like the organization's getting value where they can. And sure, we get some directional moves that maybe didn't land quite as well as I think they wanted to. I'm looking at you, Chase Claypool, though the book's not written yet on his Chicago Bears career. But even so, I love trading away a linebacker to then get a wide receiver. That's identification of positional value. And in my opinion, Jeff, as long as you're throwing your darts in the right direction, most of the time, a lot of the smart orgs will land on the board eventually. You know what I mean?
I do. I wanted to talk about our offseason.
Oh, I
you and
know.
me
I just got
project.
really excited and ranted.
Okay.
Let's
Well,
talk about it.
I want to like share it with the world. So I am trying to run a half marathon in all 50 states. This is a goal that I have been
Congratulations.
had out there for a while. I haven't done it yet. You can't congratulate me for having a
Well,
goal.
how many states are you down?
29. I've done
That's
29.
a lot. Getting over the halfway mark is a ton.
Right. So I am going to run Texas at the end of February. And you, sir, live in Texas. And I challenged you to not run with me, but run the race, the same race that I'm running. So when I say run with me, not like Robert and I are going to run it side by side. Half marathoning is, you can run it as a partner or team or whatever, but like for the most part, I just mean like show up to the race, run it with me. We'll celebrate afterwards. And you accepted.
Yes, I did. So we'll be running it. It should be a great time. We could do, like, I don't know if we're gonna be doing any a live reaction other than like Twitter, but you reminded me how badly I need to get in shape. Your own journey in terms of getting into shape has been amazing, Jeff. And so since then, I have been running. So hopefully, I mean, I certainly the goal is to complete the whole thing, but you've given me a pace that I think I can hit, which should be fun.
I'm trying to break 2 hours for the first time. My best race before this year, before 2022, I ran it in 2:11. It was the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Half Marathon.
Okay.
Years and years ago. It was one of my first states, Illinois. And then I had kind of started putting on weight, and then like that kind of got away from me. So even though I was still running half marathons, I was kind of barely getting across the finish line and some of them, and my time was way up. And so lost a lot of weight. And then I ran in Georgia, an Atlanta race in the end of October, and I ran that in like 2:05. And so I am looking to try to break 2 hours. So that's my goal for Fort Worth, is to try to get 2 hours. I signed up, so I have paid money to do this race. I am locked in. I've got a hotel, all that kind of stuff. So this is going to happen. Very excited to see you in person, meet the baby, see the wife again, all that kind of fun stuff. We'll go out, we'll have fun, and we'll celebrate this occasion for that. So very excited to do that with you, and give us a chance to hang out in the off season as well. some other stuff, but we'll announce that later. That's
I'm
the
really
personal
excited.
stuff I wanted to talk about. We got a game.
We
Do you
do.
want to talk about the game?
Oh yeah, let's do it. Are you suggesting we go ahead and run the drill?
I mean, I don't see why not. If people have comments that they would like to, or questions or whatever they want to put in the chat, of course, like we will stick around after we run the drill. But it's New Year's. Like
It's New Year's. It's a holiday.
people
It's
probably want to
college.
like start drinking or not.
It's the biggest college football day of the year
Oh, are there
as
college
well.
football going on? Huh,
Come
that's weird.
on, are you kidding me,
I don't
Jeff?
do that. I don't.
You're an Iowa Hawkeye. You won.
Are they playing right now?
They already finished and they
Oh,
won
did
a
they win?
convincing 21-0.
Oh, good.
They punted or turned it over on every single drive. Like my understanding is that they punted relatively early, so like 3 and out or turnover on all the drives but the touchdowns, and then they won 21-0. I mean,
Sounds like a Hawkeye game.
I was about to say, looking at Iowa Hawkeye box scores, it feels familiar to the Chicago Bear legacy, just as I look through what they are. And I can only imagine what it was like for you. Did you go to Iowa or did you?
I have my MBA from Iowa.
Okay. Where'd you go?
But I went to Northern Iowa for an undergrad.
When you go to Northern Iowa, do you cheer for the Hawkeyes all the same?
Yes, it is basically University of Iowa North, if that makes sense. I mean, it's a division down, and so I would say 90, and it's the eastern part of the state, so it's northeast Iowa. So it is, I would say 95% of people that go to UNI cheer for the Hawkeyes.
Okay. That makes sense to me. I mean, trust me, in Texas, you get plenty of that with UT Austin, where somehow every school is a UT Austin fan. I'm ready to run the drill if you are. You want to get into this?
Yeah, hit it. Hit it when you're ready, my friend.
Let's go. The Chicago Bears take on the Detroit Lions, this time in Motown. It is, right? I'm going to reset on that, but it is, just to be sure. I've gotten that wrong before.
It is a road game.
So I want to make sure.
We will reset.
Let's see.
I will write down a new timestamp, and you will go when you're ready.
Ron, I'll let you know. That's a great question once we get there. But the gist of what you're going to be looking for, you know what? We'll talk after the drill. The Chicago Bears are taking on the Detroit Lions for the second time this season, this time in Motown. And it should be a pretty fun game, Jeff, as for the last couple of weeks, the Bears have battled injury and seemed to get the overwhelming majority of the players that aren't out for the season on season-ending injuries back as they head into Detroit. So let's kick it off with a bang. Let's talk about what happens when the Bears have the ball. Because, Jeff, this is a different team than this is a different Lions team than the Bears faced just a couple weeks ago. Most importantly, they're confident, of course, which is a bit of an intangible. But as far as the tangibles go, they are playing with abandon. You want to talk about coaching and defense like you trust your offense? The Lions are now alternating between 2 high man looks that occasionally have some rotation, or putting 5 on the line or 4 on the line with a creeper at the end of the play to then blitz 5 after all and play 6 in coverage with press man. Lot more press in their defense, a lot more blitzing, and a lot more. They've gotten rid of some of the disguise for disguise sake, and now they just play aggressive or they drop into cover 2. From what I've seen, I'm sure there's more to it than that, but at least against the Vikings, that's primarily what they did, and that's the only game I had time to watch. And Jeff, any team that presses is going to be a handful for these Chicago Bears because their wide receivers, even with Claypool potentially looking to get back on the field, are going to cause some problems for the lower-ranking members of the Bears receiving corps. So we'll have to see if the Bears can beat that. But with Justin Fields, anything's possible when the opponent rushes more than one, because those man looks that we're talking about, Jeff, great running looks for a quarterback rushing attack. And it's exactly the same reason that the Lions suffered so badly against Justin Fields the first time. Now, it's as good old George Bush used to say, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, you can't get fooled again. So I'm very curious to see what the Lions do to stop Fields now the second time, given that the first plan didn't exactly work. But I would expect Fields' legs to need to play a pretty big role. And hey, if he's going to crash the rushing, or if he's going to break the rushing record, they need to be pretty active anyways. But what are you seeing from stats?
Well, just what you're talking about, Robert. The Bears obviously do not have good volume in their passing game. There's a lot of reasons behind that. They are very good in the run. They're actually over 200 yards better on the season than the second place running team in terms of just pure yardage, which is a pretty impressive mark. That's way out in front here. They're almost certainly going to coast to the championship of most yards rushing for the year. 179.7 per game. The Lions are not very good against the run on their defense. They're not very good at defense in general. We'll get into that here in a little bit, but they're not very good, certainly against the ground game. That really bodes an advantage there for Justin Fields. It bodes an advantage for Khalil Herbert, who's back. He did not play very much last week or very well last week, but 1 week back from an injury should be good for him. And of course, David Montgomery. So you have a three-headed attack back. And again, if they're going to play those man looks against the Bears receivers, that's going to open up a lot of Justin Fields rushing lanes. So very exciting for that. My matchup this week is actually going to be Braxton Jones against Aiden Hutchinson.
Dang.
Because if the Bears do want to try to pass the ball, which they're going to have to try to a little bit here, right? So if they are going to try to pass the ball, Aiden Hutchinson's starting to come into his own. I believe he has 7 sacks on the year. He's starting to look like a really good defensive end. He's going to be a stalwart for that Lions defense for years to come. Braxton Jones, he has made every single start and played every single snap at left tackle for the Chicago Bears. Incredible accomplishment for the young man. He is the only offensive lineman to do that this year, and he has his hands full this week, of course, but he has played pretty well given all of the circumstances surrounding him. I want to see him play against an incredibly high draft pick in Aiden Hutchinson. What do you got?
Well, now that you took my matchup, I guess I'm going to have to go with Alex Anzalone against Justin Fields. Anzalone was the primary spy man for the Lions last game, and I imagine that when they do deploy a spy, he's going to be the man again. So whether he's covering Cole Kmet, like we saw that, potential DPI, but good defense all the same, breakup that Anzalone had on Cole Kmet later on in the first game, or just trying to track Justin Fields side to side, he's going to be their primary defense mechanism against Fields. And honestly, Jeff, I did want to make one comment. You pointed out that this defense isn't very good against either the rush or the pass. Well, early in the season, they just flat out weren't good down to down. What I can credit to the way Detroit started to call their defense is that they've started to take their chances. So instead of losing every snap by a little bit, which ends up leading to drives where you're just gashed the whole way down the field, instead they win 2 snaps and they control loss on 3rd down to then get off the field. Right? If you're going to be bad, at least take chances. And this Lions defense has started to take controlled chances. And as Aiden Hutchinson and frankly, even Jeff Okudah have taken step forward, they've started to just get a couple stops. And almost like we're watching a college team, JB, it's not about trying to stop the opponent the entire game. It's trying to get enough stops for your offense to go win you a football game. And there's a reason they're on a roll. Will we get the same Lions that we got last week? I'm not sure that I can't remember who they lost to, but it was anyways, let's talk about what happens when the Bears defense is on the field, because they're going up against, let's just call it what it is, Jeff, one of the most dangerous offenses in the NFL. And the really scary piece about the Lions, they take care of the football and they are balanced. There's not one specific thing they're doing poorly. And as much as people just like me would want to jump on Jared Goff and say that he's a huge problem, he's got weapons to deal with in Jameson Williams, DJ Chark, and of course, Amon-Ra St. Brown that make this Lions passing game extraordinarily viable, especially when paired with a run game that is running over the league. Maybe not in volume, but on a per snap basis, they are doing a really great job on the ground. Kudos to Ben Johnson. The Bears are going to be bringing in a defense that is once again undermanned. It's been undermanned for weeks, and that's no different here. And if anything, Jeff, I am curious to see what the Bears do, because last week they obviously sold out to try to stop the Bills' passing attack. Kudos to them, but they gave up over 8 yards on the ground to the running backs. And that's just not going to work against a Lions team that will bludgeon you to death with a run game if you can't do anything about it. Now, the Bears were able to stop Philadelphia with their front 4 plus the other 4 that they have on the back. They've got to play 8 in the box, 7 in the box minimum if they're going to stop this run game. But if they can and push the Lions into some unfavorable passing scenarios, I'm curious to see if Alan Williams sticks with the cover 3 and cover 2s and the occasional cover 4 he's been calling. I don't think those are going to work. Now, what's that mean he needs to do? If I can be honest, JB, I'm not sure, but I'd like to see him surprise me. What does stats say to you?
if those of you that are watching with us on Second City Gridiron on YouTube, you may have picked up that the Bears are giving up the second most points per game in the league on defense, only to these Detroit Lions, who are giving up the most points per game. Overall in the season, the Lions have given up 8 more points than the Bears. These are 1 and 2 in terms of most points given up. The number 3 team, the Arizona Cardinals, 2 points behind the Bears. We have a 3-team race for the worst defense in the league. The Bears are at risk for being the worst team in the league for the first time in their history. Hat tip to Lester Wiltfong for picking out that stat. But I went back and looked. The Bears have had the best scoring defense, so number 1, least points scored against them 12 times in their history. They've had the second best scoring defense 9 times. And in fact, 50 years of Bears football has ranked in the top 5 in terms of defense. So this is very unfamiliar territory for the Bears in terms of giving up a lot of points. It's never happened before. The Lions are favored by 6 in this one. This could be the week that the Bears take the lead for the worst defense in terms of points per game. This is just going to be points. It is the highest over-under of the week. It's 52 points by the books. It's a lot. I will real quick give it because we're about out of time on the drill, but I want to see Kyler Gordon and see if he can continue his development. If he gets matched up against Amon-Ra St. Brown, that's their best wide receiver. Let's see if he can do anything against him. I don't really care who he guards. I just want to see what he looks like in this game and continue his development. What about you?
If the Bears are playing to win the game, they're going to need some big play out of Justin Jones. Yes, that's going to match him up against Penei Sewell, and I think it's Evan Brown on that right guard spot, but it's just them's the breaks. I mean, they're going to need some plays from their 3-tech in both the run game and the passing game. But the Bears and the Lions aren't going to be the only teams trying to win, as we now segue into our prop bet segment, as we've got some really interesting props on the day here, Jeff. For instance, we're looking at, I could just take a look at this immediately. I will literally take the over on Justin Fields sacks every single week. I mean, this week is no different. A run that doesn't quite scrape past the line of scrimmage is still considered a sack. Justin Fields touches the ball too many times, and the line has been too suspect not to take that over. And worst case scenario, Justin Fields has been sacked at least twice in the last couple, or certainly like I'm not even looking at the stats, and I can tell you it's like 10 out of the last 11 weeks minimum. So worst case scenario, you're pushing your money because they didn't give you 2.5. What looks good to you?
I love the Justin Fields 1.5 touchdown bets. I think that he is absolutely going to cross that because he's going to carry the ball. He's going to have a live chance for that with his legs, but I think he can get it through the air as well. Again, this is a bad defense. They're not very good. You say they take chances. They're just trying to turn the ball over a little bit, get the ball back for their offense, but they are going to allow yards. They're going to allow points. Fields is, even though he's got a depleted receiving core, I think it's more than reasonable to expect him to get a couple through the air and maybe one with his legs. So I'm in on Justin Fields over 1.5 touchdowns. That one seems like my favorite bet of the week.
I always find it a little frightening to take passing yardage or receiving yardage totals when they're as high as Amon-Ra St. Brown's are. But Jeff, I got to tell you, Amon-Ra St. Brown is a possession receiver. Like, there was a day and age where Tyreek Hill was viewed as a big play guy. You remember that, like 5-7 years ago, where you weren't sure if he was even going to get a catch. But if he did get a catch, it was going to be a 65-yard touchdown. And especially in fantasy, that just made him a strange decision to play week to week. Amon-Ra St. Brown is anything but that. I mean, he's going to get targeted probably 10 to 12 times. He's probably going to catch 8 to 10 of those targets. And 80 yards doesn't feel unreasonable for him against a Bears team that I do think is going to just put them in just enough of these like 2nd and 9 situations where they want to throw the ball. I think St. Brown's going to get it, and 80.5 yards just does not feel like much to eclipse. Look, this isn't the greatest way to go about things, JB, but number 1 receivers up against the Bears lately have had just about whatever they wanted. Just take a look at AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and Stephon Diggs, and anybody else. Then again, Diggs and whatnot, like Diggs made some plays, but I'm getting off track. I would take the over on Amon-Ra St. Brown. We can't only take overs. Do you see any unders?
I'm going to take under Bears 1.5 sacks. Sorry, their defensive line and their pass rush just is non-existent. And the Lions have a good offensive line. And Jared Goff, like I said, Jared Goff takes care of the ball, and he doesn't take a lot of sacks. So even if he does, I'm not confident in the Bears being able to get home here. They get a random one. Remember, Jaquan Brisker is their top sack guy. Like, I mean, come on. Like, this is not a team that rushes the passer much. In terms of other unders, I'm not sure. I actually like the DJ Shark over as well. And, you know, honestly, everybody's kind of live on that Lions offense because the Bears defense is, you know, pretty suspect. And I would not bet against Justin Fields rushing yards at all.
Well, I feel like contrary to that, JB, if you want Fields to have a good day rushing, and if you want Cole Kmet to have a good day out there, bet those unders. There's going to be no better way to influence those Bears players playing a little bit better than the moment you put money down on them. Because like you're saying, both of those props feel right on the line of what's possible, right? I mean, the scary thing for Cole Kmet is that last time he played the Lions, he had 2 scores, and both of them looked fairly easy. That's just not out of the question this time. So Cole Kmet could spend the entire game doing nothing and then catch a 25-yard touchdown strike, and boom, you just pushed, right? It feels like a dangerous thing to take the under on, but I don't think Cole Kmet's going to eclipse 12 fantasy points even with the score. And the moment he proves me wrong, drag me. I accept it, and I will eat the crow the same.
The only one that I would bet against, a bet under, I should say, not against. You're taking a side, would be actually the Montgomery rushing yards, just because I think that they'll split the carries a little bit more evenly, and I do think that they're going to try to run Justin a little bit, just because he's had so much success against him last time. So I think that's it for us, though, right?
Yep.
All right, this is the penultimate episode. And that's been awesome all year. We really appreciate that. And we will be back next week with the final episode. And so we'll see you next week. Okay, perfect. Robert, talk about Ron's
couple question. Players to watch. Ron, Thank you for waiting patiently. So taking a look at the games that we've got, obviously we have TCU, Michigan, Georgia, and Ohio State. And if there were some players that I would watch, just because, okay, look, Ron, if I could be honest with you, if you're watching these games and you're thinking about second round picks, I applaud you and commend you. If you're thinking about later round guys, like right now, applaud and commend. But I'll give you 3 guys to watch, 2 in the Ohio State game. And actually, I guess the Ohio State guy that I'm thinking of isn't playing. TCU's wide receiver, Quentin Johnston, I believe is going to be playing in the playoffs. I always want to go look these up just to be sure, but he is wearing number 1. He's a fabulous deep threat wide receiver. Some have called him a project. I don't think he's that projecty out at like superstar X receiver. There's a very decent chance, Jeff, that he is the most highly coveted player in this draft. Okay. So at receiver, like, do you remember, Jeff, just in case this lands, Garrett Wilson last year or Chris Olave, one of those two, were probably the best receiver. They did not get drafted first. Drake London got drafted first, because when you find somebody that's roughly 6'4" and runs a 4.3, 4.4, they get picked sooner. Like, that body type doesn't grow on trees. Was it Bill Parcells who had the planet theory that said there's just only so many guys on the planet that even meet that criteria, right?
It's usually big. It was big guys. Yeah.
It was usually big guys, but it applies to huge, fast people like DK Metcalf. That body type just doesn't grow on trees, period. The other obvious, or in that same way, it would not surprise me if, despite whether JSN, Jordan Addison, other receiver options may ultimately be the better player, like at their spot, Quentin Johnston's likely going to be a top 10 pick if he continues to play like he has and tests like we think he will. I think Jalen Carter's the obvious one for you to watch, Ron, if I can be honest. He's going to be playing in the Ohio State-Georgia game, obviously. And if you ask me, if the Bears are at 1, Jeff, I want your opinion on this. If the Bears somehow land the first overall pick, a trade back to me seems flat out inevitable. I mean, it's too high a place to pick, but Jalen Carter, the more film I watch, and this is no disservice to Will Anderson. This is no disservice to Tyree Wilson. Both of them look like phenomenal players. Jalen Carter is fresh. Jalen Carter has no injury history. Jalen Carter is young. Jalen Carter is dominant. And the most dominant players in the league recently have been Chris Jones and Aaron Donald when it comes to defensive disruption, just on a isolated individual level. Probably Max Crosby while you're at it, but frankly, that comp's better to Tyree anyways. So the point being, Jeff, Jalen Carter might be the best defensive player of the draft. if he is, and the Bears are at 2, I think that is a very reasonable pick, given how much Matt Eberflus obviously covets that super athletic 3 technique. And I mean, I don't want to put myself out in a place where I could end my own career for being so wrong. But as good as DeForest Buckner is, I think Jalen Carter has a chance to be a flat league changer. Like, I mean, if in the world of what could he be, Jeff, he could be a Micah Parsons level player that's just flat dominant from the interior in a defense that suits him well. He is one of those rare players where normally I'm a big trade back fiend, right? I love value. I'm too much of a nerd based on my stature, if you can't tell, Jeff, to not love value wherever I can get it. But Jalen Carter is the rare player that I look at it too specifically and say, ooh, I don't actually know if you can pass that up. And I mean that as the highest praise I can offer somebody. He's somebody who, if you want eyes glued to the television, just keep your eye out for him.
I would, based on the state of the roster, I wonder if you almost have to trade down and gather more picks. It's all, I mean, we'll have a lot of these conversations, but if you're at 1, I think you have to, it'd be irresponsible not to.
At 1, it's irresponsible.
Yeah. And then even if you're at 2, there's real conversations to be had, depending on how far you're going to go down. But if those quarterbacks are bubbling up and there's real interest and there's, some real value in trading down, I really think you kind of have to try it. But if you don't, the thing is that taking that is more about what's the opportunity cost is like, here are your best 2 options, right? So what are you giving up the opportunity for if you take one player? And for the Bears that have a lot of roles to be filled, a lot of holes to be filled, whatever you want to say, the opportunity is that like there's a lot of draft picks and depth building and capital, that you can use in a lot of different ways. You can go in many different directions, and you're not putting them all on one player. But if you take him, basically what you're saying is this guy needs to be multiple all pros for this to have made sense, right? And that maybe that's it, right? And maybe that's the type of guy you take, and he becomes one of the best defensive players in the league. And he's the opposite of the counterpart, I should say, of Justin Fields. You have Justin Fields and the orbit around him on the offense, and then you have a defensive player in a scheme that needs that type of player, and it's perfect, and the orbit is around him, and you start to build out from there. I can see that. I mean, it is what it is. I'm going to cheer for him either way, right?
Oh, sure.
I'm going to cheer for whoever the Bears pick and however they work out. So I'm fine with it. But
Jeff, let me put it this way. This is at least how I think about it, right? And I promise I'm not saying this in hindsight. And Jeff, I will bank on you to vouch that when we would talk offline, I would talk about this all the time. For as good as Khalil Mack was, and at no point am I ever trying to pretend Khalil Mack was not amazing. Khalil Mack was a perfect example of how the league has begun to figure out how to take an edge rusher away from the game if they desperately want to, right? You can't really throw a triple team, to use an example, at an interior player. And that's part of why when you look at this Chiefs defense, when you look at what the Rams defense was in their Super Bowl season, Rams defense isn't a great example because they have Jalen Ramsey on the back end. So let's focus on the Chiefs defense. The Chiefs defense have a bunch of good players, 1 star in Chris Jones, and he really does wreak enough havoc to win games from the defensive side, like at least enough for Patrick Mahomes. I mean, not to use a silly example here, but if you have a vehicle, a car, and you have the best tires and your axles are great and you got brand new oil and like the windshield looks nice, right? You've got leather interior, but the engine isn't up to par, the car doesn't run well. Right, Jeff? And I know that that's harsh because that's not quite true for most of these defensive players. But in my opinion, I would tell you that Jalen Carter has the opportunity, Jeff, to be the kind of guy that lets you go cheap on up to 4 other players on the defense. In my opinion, Vic Fangio and Ryan Pace put together a perfect defense in 2018. Yes, they lost, and I understand that. But when you go pop, 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 like across that defense, 2-1, every single player is good, right, Jeff? Like, I mean, the pinnacle of that 2018 team was a shutdown defense. The problem is, why is that hard to, like, why doesn't that work? Why don't people have these defenses all the time? It's because collecting 11 legitimately good players is nigh impossible. I mean, it's just so hard, Jeff. And the moment you do, it's gone out of nowhere. Same roster showed up for the most part in 2019, but Akeem Hicks got hurt and Mac got a little bit injured, and suddenly the defense fizzled. Like, you lost Amos, Callahan, and those
Floyd.
Two.
Yeah.
It just all disappeared. And I look at Jalen Carter and I think to myself, in a perfect world within this defense, because I agree with you, Reinhardt, like, you can get a good defensive tackle in the in free agency. You can then go with then you got with the I'm going to just see that you picked Will Anderson Jr. and just know that I agree with you, because I get what you're saying. If it's me, I can't stop looking at Tyree Wilson. Like, that's right now, PFF has him mocked at number 33. So before you fight me, I'll remind everybody that Christian Watson was considered the 122nd best prospect in the NFL this exact time last year. And suffice to say, Jeff, that's just not where he went. Like, I think Tyree Wilson is good enough to be in the top 5 conversation, and he's about 35 pounds and about 5 aggregate inches longer than Will Anderson. He's the kind of guy. Look, Jeff, I know. Okay, can you think of, like, I'm thinking of like Marcus Davenport, but like better. Cam Jordan's an example of what I'm looking for, where not every defense wants an outside linebacker, and that's not to say that Will Anderson doesn't fit in the Bears defense. He went off in Alabama. Like, he's awesome. Like, I don't at any point want to make this about disparaging Will Anderson. It's more to say that I know Flus likes bigger people on that defensive line. And so Tyree Wilson could very well be that ultra athletic chaos creator that, worst case scenario, Jeff, the production never lives up and you end up with like a bigger Leonard Floyd. But I don't even know if Leonard Floyd, like a bigger Leonard Floyd, so to speak, is a bad thing within this defense. It's just bad if that's your only player. Because, I mean, Jeff, if there's one other thing I can mention, and then I finally want you to talk, I do feel like the Bears Claypool trade has put them in a bit of a hole where it really magnifies that first pick. I mean, if you theoretically botched number 2, but you got 33 right, that sucks, but we can work with it, right? But you go from 2 to 56 or whatever it's going to be, right? And that's a long wait. I mean, it makes that trade down just feel natural, doesn't it? Where you pick up a second rounder or something like that. You go down to 5. You get 37 for your trouble. You get a future first rounder. Like, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I do feel like the Bears have set themselves up for a very interesting offseason, because then, like, the worst part, Jeff, just so I can make sure you can find an okay 3 technique a lot easier than you can find an okay edge rusher. That's the scary thing here, right? Jalen Carter may be Chris Jones, but you can find budget Chris Jones in Justin Jones. It's just not as useful. Does that make sense? Like, remember when Akeem Hicks was so good, you could count on him to take on a double team against the run, and if you double teamed him in the pass rush, he might beat that too. Like, the guys that are just better have seasons that just make complete havoc on the defense. And without those guys, it's tough to win with what Flus wants to do. We're just going to have to see.
So what I'll add is, again, you have a lot of holes, and free agency will be a time to do that. And once we see what they do in free agency, that will also inform where they're at. They go out and they spend a bunch of money and they're able to put big contracts on a lot of those positions, then they might not need to necessarily trade down, right? Or they might be able to say, like, we're going to take our star because we feel pretty good about some of the guys we got. I mean, those guys still have to, even though the Bears have a lot of money, they still have to choose to sign in Chicago, right? But they have to add at least 2, but probably 3.
Oh yeah,
offensive linemen. They have to add a lot of defensive linemen.
4,
right? Okay,
minimum.
4, right? They have to figure out at least one linebacker to go with Sanborn. We feel pretty good about Sanborn playing one of those spots, right? maybe you re-sign Montgomery, or maybe you draft somebody later and you give it the role over to Herbert, but you don't have a complete running back room. You still have to sign more wide receivers, right? Like I don't know who you want to bring back or who you want to, so you're going to sign or draft a wide receiver or two. You still need a number one, that's for sure, right? So there's a lot that you still have to do. And you're going to be able to do a lot of that in free agency, but not all of it. And honestly, even with free agency and the draft, you're not going to be able to do all of it. There's still going to be some replacement level players.
It's so core, Jeff, that we make it clear to all you good listeners out there. It is extraordinarily reasonable and normal to expect to need another year after this before the team is quote unquote done. That's not to say that 2023 shouldn't be way more fun. And we're not trying to walk anything back. We've been looking forward to 2023 because they're not going to be 3-14, right, Jeff? But next year, we're expecting the Jaguars. That's if things go relatively well, or the Lions or the Giants. Not exactly the same, but you get what I mean, right, Jeff? Fun young quarterback. Parts of the team are working. There will always be disappointments. The moment that you expect all of your free agents and all of your draft picks to just nail it is when you are doing exactly what Ryan Pace did, and it creates problems down the line. You need to be ready. You need a roster of backups that could start in the league when you really want to be at that Eagles level of talent. You know what I mean, Jeff? Like the Super Bowl winners.
It's Lions, Jaguars, because that's where they're at in their rebuilds. Is Lions, Jaguars, but Lions with a higher ceiling because you've got a more dynamic, point guard, whatever you want to say, right?
Jaguars.
But you got Jaguars, yeah, they're just built a little different. But yeah,
totally. It's not exactly the same. It's more to say that
same.
You get that. You still have that quarterback on the Jaguars that on 3rd and 14, just who knows, right? You may very well just get one of the best throws in the NFL that week. And that'd be huge. In this case, the reason I say that is because, like you're talking about Reinhardt, I think Reinhardt mentioned this, but Jeff, the hidden piece of this puzzle that everybody forgets to talk about is that we never actually hear how negotiations went down between a lot of these free agents. We hear Marquez Valdez-Scantling signs $3 million deal for this much money to play in Kansas City. I don't even know if he signed a 3-year deal. I think it may have been a 1-year deal, just thinking out loud. And everybody goes, "You're kidding me. The Bears couldn't pay that." And Jeff, they might have offered him double the money and he might not have wanted it. I mean, it's always hard to get a read on just what actually happened in the negotiation room. The Bears may very well, let's pretend Daron Payne makes it to free agency and Dallas signs him, right? The Bears may have offered him $4 million a year more. Money may just not have talked that much, or state income tax, or the state of the team. There are all kinds of things that happen in free agency. And to your point, Jeff, despite the fact that the Bears have to spend a lot of this money, they have to spend $168 million of cash to be league compliant by 2023. So the Bears will spend, and it doesn't matter who it's on, the Bears will spend. But they still have to nail it in the negotiation table. They have to win some of these arguments. They have to convince players of, hey, we're not going to waste your career. We're going to pay you, and we're going to try to set you up as best we can for your next deal, whether it's with us or somebody else. And we're going to try to put a ring on your finger. It's a tough sell because there are going to be a lot of teams, Jeff, or not teams. There are going to be a lot of players that see a 3-14 team, right? And even if the GM got so brazen as to walk into the negotiation room and say, "We did it on purpose. We were waiting for you." That's a tough sell compared to an agent getting a similar, not the same offer to go play with Josh Allen. But it's going to be up to Ryan Poles because, like you're saying, it's one thing to say, "Oh, we'll add this, that in free agency, and then we'll attack this in the draft." And then the guy just doesn't want to come to Chicago, hates Chicago, has an ex who lives in Chicago, never wants to see her, not coming to that city. You just don't know. You know what I mean? And until you're out of it, until the ink is dry on those contracts and they're coming, you really might as well just not plan like they're there. It doesn't matter how much I want Draymond Jones. Do the Bears want him? Does he want to be a Bear? It's the most interesting piece of the league that nobody talks about. It's just that free agent cycle and all the discussions that happen. Like, for instance, Devontae Adams, is he going to become a problem in Las Vegas? Because it's easy to assume that Derek Carr was a huge part of winning him to come to Las Vegas. And now they look like they're about to jettison Derek Carr. So I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it's the most interesting part of the offseason that we're not dealing with a computer. These are people. And we're just going to have to see what they're able to do.
Yeah, if you can't tell, Rob and I have something planned. We will tell you a little bit more about that, but you can see how excited he is. Thanks for joining us. We're going to get out of here because, again, it's New Year's Eve.
I have one more question for you, Jeff.
Oh, okay.
You're a gambling man, okay?
Yeah.
So I don't know if the people should be excited. I don't know if the people shouldn't be excited. Let's pretend that I gave you 3-1 odds in both directions, but you can only bet one, so you can't hedge your bet, right? Do you think the Texans will win one of these next two games? Or do you think, if you had to put money on it, do you think that they had enough leash because they had two games, right? Where they told Lovey, literally do whatever you want. Like, I couldn't care less until the moment you win one. And then we may need to change gears. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Like you're saying now, like,
I'm
like,
saying,
whoa.
I'm saying that 3 years ago, and in a copycat league, the Eagles threw a game, right? These teams just can't be blind to this. Like, as much as we say coaches don't tank, you know what? Week 12, you're right. Week 17, I don't know about that. You know what I mean, Jeff? Like, I just don't know.
Lovey's set up for, they basically gave him a contract that was 1 year. Like, I mean, I think there's multiple years, but like, it's kind of just guaranteed for 1 year or something. There's something weird about the contract language that I don't think you can really tell Lovey what to do or not to do unless you gave him like a new deal. Because I think he's just gonna just keep coaching and he's gonna do his thing. That Texas team's been playing hard, and they've got to, I think the Jags will come out and try to beat them. So I don't know. That's a weird game, but that last week, I was live, man, and I think that they're playing competitive football at a time when the Colts are not. Like, the Colts are looking pretty terrible. So I think that they absolutely can win.
I think they can too. There's a reason I started on whether I think the Texans have enough incentive to win, right?
Oh, they have no incentive to win, but those guys that are playing certainly do. Like, the organization does not have an incentive.
I'm splitting the org for a moment, right? Mm-hmm. Like, do the guys have incentive to win? I could tell you the Bears, like, not the players. The players kind of get hung out to dry here, but like, even the coaches have incentive to lose, right? Like, the coaches get more to work with because they're all here for another year. I don't think anybody's getting fired after year one of a Chicago Bears team where the entire defensive staff is tight with the head coach and the offense overperformed. Right, Jeff? I mean, perfect season, you know?
Davis Mills certainly wants to keep playing football, right? And he knows that they're going to probably take a quarterback, but is he playing for he's still playing for his own, like, there's guys like that. Like, that's what it comes down to. Davis Mills obviously wants to win football games and be like, hey man, I took this team that was trying to tank and I want to, we looked good. We won a couple of games on the stretch. Like, that's how Davis Mills, best case scenario for him is that he's like that 28th starter in the league, right? Like, where he starts on teams, but
good backup really even. Anywhere. But look at
Chase
Daniel.
That's the most likely scenario for him. But like, the best case scenario is that he continues to get starting jobs, into his career where he gets starter money, but like not really starter money, but he's making good money. That's what he's doing right now. He's trying to figure that out for his life, right?
Yep.
So I think there's plenty of incentives that are like that throughout up and down the roster. And if they're playing well together, that team, why wouldn't you? I mean, to me, the Colts are a mess. They probably like Lovey for the Texans. I don't know, man. Like, I called it weeks ago, though, right? Like, I called it weeks ago that they would beat the Titans. So,
and on the flip side, I mean, so one of these teams had a game down to the wire in Dallas, followed immediately by taking the Chiefs to overtime, followed immediately by actually winning. So, like, it's one thing to get lucky, right? But 3 weeks in a row, it's not a coincidence, it's a pattern. On the other hand, Jeff, the only reason I'm even having this discussion about like whether it's incentivized for the organization to win or not to win is because I would swear to you it is bizarre consistently seeing a pattern of, hey, let's give Fields a shot play. Oh, he nailed it. 3 runs. Like, you know what I mean, Jeff? Where it's like, oh, sweet. The Bears, look at the Packers game.
Pull back.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, it's like, pull back.
In the Packers game, it was as if Fields was playing too well. And so they decided, okay, we're going to call runs, wide receiver screens. Like, I don't have to see Fields running the ball all the time, right? And I understand that not every deep shot is going to result in a deep shot. Like, plenty of times you'll get swing passes, but the Bears followed up that Velus Jones bomb while the game was still within 8 points with run, 4th down pass. And then the immediate drive after that, where they picked off Nick Morrow on a play that still doesn't make sense. I don't know what Josh Allen was doing. They went swing pass, run, field goal at that point. Like, I'm not saying the proof's in the pudding, but I am saying, like, they don't call the first half this way, do they? And it just, I
think what you're saying is that when you have a good plan, which is good for the future. Like when you come out with a good game plan in the first half, that's good. And then your guys are playing tough early. That's good.
Yes.
And then the other team makes adjustments. And then by the end of the game, that depth and talent generally wins out.
That is definitely the narrative I would want to tell the NFL. If I was the Bears,
I think that's fairly like accepted.
I think that there's a huge difference between the early way that they call the game, where they stick the ball in Justin's hand and they say, I don't really care what you do with it, but it's yours, versus the end of the game where suddenly it's the offensive line full of backups job to go get you a first down. I'm not saying, Jeff, that it's definitely happening. I'm saying comparing the fact that it feels as if they deliberately shift the focus of the offense in the second half of some of these games where they're doing better than they realize, right? The Packers game, they were blowing them out, and suddenly the offense let them back in the game. The Bills game, they were winning at half, right? And suddenly they're getting blown out. Look, I'm not saying, Jeff, that I actually think this is going on. I'm saying I'm trying to draw as reasonable a conclusion as I can. And I don't think Luke Getsy is a doofus based on the way that the first half tends to go. So either they're adjusting in the worst way possible, or weirdly enough, Jeff, every single one of these losses does technically help the organization and has been helping the organization for the last 4 weeks. And all these guys have job security. Maybe they're taking a really avant-garde approach to building for an offseason. But obviously you can't sit Justin Fields or you're just flat throwing games. The NFL is going to throw a fit, right? So I don't know. Like, I hope I'm making you squirm a little bit. I'm just saying that we are looking at two very young, like a GM and assistant GM, that are not likely entrenched in their ways, right? They were given a year to pay all the debts, more dead cap in defenders than actual defenders. Like, you can follow the money, you can follow the results, you can follow all kinds of this stuff. And it keeps leading me back to something I think that it looks as if the entire team is committed to. And if the Texans don't watch out, the Bears may get their way. That's how I feel. Right.
This is the new All the President's Men. Are you the new Deep Throat? Follow the money.
I don't want to be the tinfoil alt Bears. Like,
we're gonna put you behind
podcaster.
we're gonna gray out your screen, like you're black to see like the outline, and then we're gonna give you a voice modulator, right? and it's just gonna be like, follow the money.
So funny.
More dead money on defenders than defenders on the field. Follow the money. First half play calling versus second half play calling. I don't know, man. Yeah, it might be an off-season video. You do. It's like
I don't know either, and I can't help that. I just have to make it clear one more time that I really find this ridiculous. I feel like I'm talking about like one of those crazy conspiracy theories where you think that Adam,
what you're doing,
like where it talks about like Avril Lavigne being dead and having been replaced by a body double. That's a real conspiracy theory out there. That's not, I don't believe in it,
And
but I want you to know that there's a
Rob,
sect of people
why
that
do you have to
does.
make things so complicated?
It's that was good. It's more to say, Jeff, that either the Bears are really lucky and they're having a bit of a miracle season from a nerd perspective, or these people read the tweets, not like my tweet, right? But like they read PFF's tweets and have been reading PFF's tweets for a while about like the value of these picks and understanding trade downs. And if you don't spend any money at offensive line and defensive line, that you'll lose a bunch of your games. And shocker, they didn't spend any money on defensive line and offensive line after the Ogunjobi deal fell through. I guess Justin Jones, but really that's our like feather in the cap signing. Like, I don't know, Jeff. I just keep looking at this team and I'm like, I'm not convinced they're trying to win. Now, does that mean that they're automatically trying to lose? No, but I hold to that Packers game in particular, Jeff, felt like the older brother being told by his mom, you better let your brother win, and like waiting around for the Packers to finally get some points on the board, because that offense, like that Packers offense, left everything open for the Bears to just blow them out. So either there's a finishing problem or fill in the blank. But I do think that, like you're saying, the talent piece, like talent winning out in the end, definitely comes up. I think there's a reason the offensive line starts hotter than it finishes. So like that, I could totally agree with, right? Because they haven't run the ball well at the end of the game in weeks. They like, when's the last time that they were still winning that matchup? That much, totally there.
There may be a little bit in Getsy not like being better at the beginning. Like he'll have his crib notes, he'll have his script, and then some crib notes, and then once he runs out of that, like he doesn't know where to go. That happens, but he can improve as a play caller too. So I think I just generally the right answer is the simple, elegant one, and it's once you get into these complex, like they know that if they do this gets them, it's like I think they're trying to win football games, and I think they've been, you say they've been lucky from the nerdy perspective, like you say, they've been really unlucky too, like it's just from a football standpoint, they've been unlucky in a lot of things. There's been some weird balls that have bounced a weird way. They should have beat Washington. I was at that game. They should have beat Washington.
The plan isn't, hey, Darnell dropped the ball.
Darnell Mooney drops the ball in the end zone. That would have been a win. Velus Jones fumbles. Like, unless Velus Jones was literally drafted to be a mole just to get a top
Jeff,
pick.
Just so we're clear on where this thing starts, I think it's only been for a couple of weeks. Like, that it's been deliberate, right? My point would be more that once they got mathematically eliminated, that they were like, well, wins don't help us anymore. If that makes sense. Like Miami, it's not like ESB was like, got it, coach, and they like slapped 5 on the sidelines after he dropped that 4th down, right? Like Detroit, it's not like nobody came open on purpose, it's not that complicated. It's more, I wonder if they had a group meeting when the season really started to go south, right? Where they said, we're all back next year, so what do we really want? And I don't know, right? The last couple of weeks have just been bizarre as a Bears fan, because
they also played the 2 of the best teams in the league,
and they competed with them.
That's just great. Take that as
it's amazing. I mean,
fuel. They had good first halves against those teams. Good for you.
Love it.
Super duper.
Yes. And hey, to your point, Jeff, I mean, we were talking earlier about how important reserves are. It could be sometimes as simple as the Bears are going to play all 22 of their starters for the most part, the entire game. Whereas other teams have deeper defensive line rotations. They've got corners they can bring in. Like when the linebacker gets nicked up, needs to come out for a play, he's not a complete liability when like the second guy who comes in. Like, I get what you're saying, where it's like Dieter Iselin had to take a couple snaps at right guard.
Mm-hmm.
Dieter Iselin was
guard.
taking snaps or what?
He played both guards.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, that happened. Yeah, I charted offensive lines.
That's my point, right? Yeah. There's some teams, the Packers for years. Oh, look at that. They're down both of their left tackles. They're playing a guy named Johnny two left feet. He's going to look like an all-pro
he's
against
good?
Khalil Mack.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, love it. All right, let's really get out of here, guys. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining us all year. This show was a brainchild of Robert's. I had to get a jacket that was similarly awesome like Robert's, but not quite as well. We dressed up. We had fun. We did a lot of it recorded at first, and then we kind of switched over once we proved that concept to more of a live stream so we could hang out with you. We'll do one more. Obviously, we will preview the Vikings game next week, and then we'll be done for the year. And then we'll figure out where the future of this show goes and what to do with it. So let us know what you liked, what you didn't like. Just be nice about it. Don't, more content wise, don't, make fun of my bald head like the one guy did after week 5, and I had to buy a hat because I felt self-conscious about my bald
Dang,
head
Jeff,
shining
you're really
on
ripping into
here.
this guy, aren't you?
I'm just saying. Like, did you have to like call it out like that?
Nobody make fun of Jeff's bald head.
I mean,
Nobody do it.
It is shaved. Like, I have taken control of it, but yes, I am bald, so it is what it is. Otherwise, man, just, people let us know, and we'll figure it out, and we'll improve and adapt for next year. And enjoy your New Year's. Don't do anything too silly, but have fun. Are you okay?
It's been this long, and I didn't put together that it's as simple as all 20 Tuesday. I had this the entire season, and I didn't get all 20 Tuesday put together until week 17. I'm bummed. So bear with me tomorrow after the game, all 20 Tuesday at 8 p.m. this Tuesday.
Man, you got to brand that right now.
That's just right
Go
there.
brand it. Stop what you're doing. Cancel your plans. Go put a little trademark in. Let's get a little logo going, and we will have that for next year. Love it. All right, guys. Take care. We'll see you next year.